Good morning. Good morning again. Hello. Hi. My name is Eric Alperly, and I'm Merit's past president. In fact, when I retired, they gave me the fancy title of President Emeritus. So that's who I am, and I have the great privilege and honor this morning of welcoming all of you to the 10th anniversary meeting of NANOG. I would just observe that we're now half as old as Apple's Macintosh. As many of you know, NANOG is an outgrowth, if you will, of some meetings that were held during the NSFNet era known as the Regional Techs meetings. The NSFNet era began in the mid-1980s when a 56 kilobit network interlinked the 6 newly formed supercomputer centers that the National Science Foundation had established. That network was soon replaced by a T1 network linking 13 sites, the 6 supercomputer centers and regional networks that had come into place as part of the NSFNet's overall program. Merit had a role in the 56 kilobit network, but our major activity occurred during the era that began in 1988 with the T1 network. Merit was joined in a partnership with IBM MCI to provide that network infrastructure. And part of the task that Merit had during the NSFNet era, was to create a venue to have meetings of the leadership of the regional networks and the technical staff from Merit and IBM MCI in order to share and exchange information among and with the regional network staff and our partnership staff. The observation I would make about that is that in some sense NANOG can trace its history back not 10 years but 16 years, going back to 1988 when the initial regional techs meeting began. I'd also observe that there's more history, if you will, than that than many of us have been involved with. Back in 1969, the fall of that year was the beginning of the infrastructure that the ARPA people put together, known as the ARPANET. So that network began in the fall of 1969. One other observation from a Merit perspective is that same year, that same fall, is when Merit began to assemble staff and plan and start implementation for a network that today we call MishNet in Merit. Merit's MishNet's first connection occurred in December of 1971. And I think I can observe that as far as I know, Merit's network, MishNet, is the oldest continuously operating network under the same management structure that exists. If someone has other information about anything else that might suggest another network, I'd appreciate knowing, but Merit has a long and proud involvement in history in the networking world. I call attention to the beginning of the ARPANET era, because in many sense that's essentially the span of years, almost 35 now, that constitutes what we would otherwise consider the internet. The 20 years or so of the ARPANET from 69 until the overlap with the NSFNet era, in some sense that's the internet timeline. So if you think about going from 1969, 35 years, and or the beginning of the NSFNet era roughly 16 years ago, or 10 years now with NANOG in the follow-on to the NSFNet era. All those periods of time, in some sense, are a number of years, but historically seem exceedingly short. And so much has been accomplished during each of those eras to make it very exciting. and many, if not all of you here in this room have had a significant amount of involvement and contribution to a very successful evolution of the Internet. And I think you should all feel extremely proud and pleased to have made that contribution. Thank you, and again, welcome. And I'm going to turn the meeting over now to Susan Harris, my colleague.
It is wonderful to have you here, Eric. I had major PowerPoint excitement about 1 minute to 9 this morning because of our network fluctuation. So plus, this is the first time I've ever stood up in front of NANOG, so I need help, Jason.
You should go anywhere.
But I want to reassure everyone, I'm not embarrassed. You know, this doesn't bother me. Everything will be smooth. Wow. Thanks so much. Yeah, I know how sincere you are in that applause. Eric talked about merit a lot. I just want to amplify a bit for those of you who are new, that we are a merit network. We are based at the University of Michigan, and we're actually governed by all of Michigan's public universities. We connect most of the state's colleges, universities, K-12 schools, and many other organizations to the internet. A couple of these slides I'm going to jump over, but I do want to mention that these regional text meetings that we held in the late 80s, mid 90s were run by Sue Hares, who is not me. See, I am Susan Harris. Sue Hares is a different person. She's waving, and she is our anniversary queen for the day. She'll be moderating all of our talks and introducing our speakers. People, of course, Eric, Hans Werner Braun was the first PI on the NSFnet. He was succeeded by a face that will be familiar to many of us, Mark Knopper. Mark was succeeded by Elise Garrick, and together they founded NANOG. Lower left here, unfortunately, see, because of this weird bar I have on my screen, you can't see, this is not WB on the lower left, it's Hans Werner. It's Elise, it's Dave Katz, and Sue Harris, both of whom were at Merit at the time, doing some kind of very delicate looking work, it looks like. These are my predecessors as NANOG coordinators, but of course no review of important people of the age would be complete without mentioning back to data. The web, of course, introduced in 92, but it wasn't until 95 that web traffic actually exceeded FTP in the number of packets on the NSFnet backbone and was not far behind in the number of bytes. And do you remember Gopher? The growth of traffic on the backbone, the very front of the chart is the end of the project, the beginning months of 95, when the regional networks were detaching from the NSFnet and moving to other backbones. This was all part of NSF's grand plan. It had always been the goal that the NSFnet architecture would be redone, replaced, and renewed in the mid-90s, that our backbone, the NSFnet, would be replaced by many commercial backbones connected at the network access points. Commercial ISPs first began to appear during that time. But back to this chart. Overall, on the NSFnet, traffic grew about 11% a month and doubled every 7 months. Nowadays, it is, of course, impossible to tell exactly how much traffic is out there, but we at NANOG have a very special tool we can use to always turn to give us reliable information about the current health of the internet. And that is, of course, the price per cookie at NANOG. This was a calculation launched by Bill Norton years ago, and of course I've very assiduously continued it since. More seriously, still dismal. See, that is not funny, I don't think, frankly. Still really low numbers of women at NANOG, although this is the first meeting I've seen where we've actually reached almost 10%. Still way down. Thank you. A lot of our speakers this time are women as well. I heard a depressing statistic on NPR in January. It was a report of a study done at 50 colleges and universities. Of all the professorships in science and engineering at those schools, only 3 to 5% were held by women. Our moderators, I've already mentioned Sue. Other people from the program committee who will be helping us out tomorrow are Dave Meyer and Bill Manning, who will be going solo. He will not be with his friend tomorrow. Cisco, thank you so much for feeding us this morning. You've noticed the last couple of meetings we're doing something new. One sponsor, one vendor or service provider has a table at each break, and plus they give us food. Cisco did that today. Tomorrow, a company who's new to us, Quasmetrics, will be providing breakfast. And this afternoon, Force 10, who has been so loyal over several meetings at providing breaks, will be back with us. Thank you so much to all of these companies. Also to Florida International, which provided our multicast V6 feed, working closely with Merit and with Terramark. Internet 2 provided equipment for that connection. But of course, most of our thanks go to an organization as yet unmentioned this morning, Terramark, our host not only today, but back a couple of years ago. It's my pleasure to introduce Andy Burnett.
Now let's see if I can make this look easy. There we go. Welcome to Miami, NANOG 30. Basically, Miami, February in Miami is a great place to be. Glad to have everyone here. Weather's going to be mostly sunny, highs near 80. That's the forecast generally from October through May. There's good food everywhere, and there's parking meters everywhere. So if you go venturing out and so forth, check your meter because they often operate until 10 p.m. or later in the evening. The obligatory picture of the network here at NANOG. And I'd like to offer thanks to Vidal, Diego, Bill, Andy, Lily, Eric, and Ernesto for getting all of this running and up and ready for you as they come together this week. So that's my conclusion. It's short and simple. Thanks for coming, everybody.